Hey everyone, Cleo here, welcome to my channel. Today I'll be talking about the books that I finished in February. Now February, rating wise, isn't really a good month for me, it seems. I'm quite happy with the amount of books I got in. I was hoping to get to 5, but I ended up getting to 4 in the month of February. I did finish the 5th one like on the 1st of March, but that doesn't count. So for the month of February I had a couple of books that were in my TBR. I weirdly enough had like the ambition, like, yeah, that's sure, if I finish those I'll add some other in there, but it was way too ambitious, my TBR, so I definitely didn't have time for it. Now the first book that I finished this month, it's gonna be controversial. I'm gonna tell you straight ahead, I did not enjoy this book, and it's been like, it was all of the rage in 2018. Everybody was talking about it, everybody was saying it was the best book of the year, how much they loved it, how much they adored the main character, the writer, and I will say, in part, I think it's the hype that let me down, because I clearly did not have the same experience with this book. However, I also think I was well prepared to deal with the hype, you know. A lot of times in the past I've had difficulties with hyped books. I've been reading them after people have been hyping them up, and then I've been disappointed about them. But now I'm very much aware of this, and when I go into a book that's very much hyped, I try to go into it with as much of an open mind and as much of a blank expectation sheet. Actually, I mostly even go into it expecting to dislike it. So with that in mind, I went into this book hoping to just like, let this be a fresh experience, don't let other people's opinions invade my experience of it, and I think I did a good job of that. You know, at the very beginning I absolutely loved it. I really liked the way in which the narrative flowed. I liked the characters that we were being introduced to. It was very fast paced, I was entranced, but like 2/3 of the way in or something I just started realizing, I'm actually not that invested in the story. I don't really care what happens to this character. I don't really care whether this character gets what she wants or anything like that. And the character was unlikable, sure, but it's possible to enjoy unlikable characters, and it's not like I really had a problem with her character, it's just that she really didn't interest me at all. The book that I'm talking about is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Jenkins Reid. I do not own a physical copy because I listened to it on audiobook. I'm actually quite happy about that as well at the moment, because so I finished this at the very beginning of February. I think this was like the 4th of February or something that I finished it, and at the end of the month I still have to, when I'm considering like, okay, what did I read this month, I almost forgot about this book, which I'm sure is going to be a shock to some people, because people loved it a lot in 2018. Now I have a full video prepared, it still needs to go into editing, I'm sorry, about my full thoughts on The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, so I'm not going to go into it too much. But so the basic problem that I had with it was that I was just not invested. It was too much of the same, you know, you have 7 husbands. A lot of these she just marries to get along in life or whatever, to further her career, and I just felt like that was the same. There was like a pattern repeating itself, and a pattern repeating itself is fine, but you know, after a while it's just too much repetition and you're just not gonna make it. I just didn't feel like I was reading anything new at that point. But so, in spite of the disappointments that I had with the book, it wasn't like I felt it was a bad book or anything, but the fact is that I'm pretty sure it's gonna be like a forgettable book for me. So I'm sorry to disappoint. Leave your hate comments down below if you feel like you need to, but yeah, I was really hoping to love it, but it just wasn't for me, it seems. So the second book that I finished in the month of February is actually a book that I also have a full video going up on at some point. Editing. So yeah, the month of February has really been like an editing slump for me, and so I really want to pick it up again in March, and these videos need to be edited immediately. I need them to go up because I just cannot deal with another video in which I have to start the title with a late February TBR, a very long overdue 2018 wrap up and things like that. So I really just want to be, maybe I should go for a timely March TBR or something like that for this one, for the next one that I'm filming. But so yeah, the second book that I read in February, so also a book that I've already done a full video on. It'll go up hopefully somewhere in the next week or something like that. And it's part of a new series that I want to introduce to my channel, which is a journey into sci-fi. Now, sci-fi is a genre in which I've dabbled a bit unconsciously, so there are some books that I've read that if I go back and like try to put them into a certain genre, which I never used to really do. You know, I read fantasy and then everything else that I read was just like not fantasy in my mind. I didn't really spend a lot of time analyzing the genres that I was reading. But if I go back, I see I have read a couple of sci-fis, and I also enjoyed those sci-fis that I read. But so I want to go into the genre a little bit more, see if it is something for me or not, but at least then I've given it somewhat of a chance. And so I've gone into it now with like a shorter book. So I have two books that my dad gave me. He didn't give it to me, he borrowed it to me, by one of his favorite authors, which is Isaac Asimov, a Russian-born American sci-fi genius, I guess. It's one of the most prolific authors in the sci-fi genre, apparently. He is the author of the Foundation trilogy, so all the robot stuff and things like that. But I went with a shorter book by him, which is Fantastic Voyage. It is a journey. It's a book about I think it's 5 individuals who are being miniaturized so that they can be injected into the bloodstream of a certain notable scientist who has made a discovery that can change the world. So the enemies of our protagonist, they've shot at, I think, the scientist, and he now has like a blood clot stuck in his brain somewhere, and he's unconscious. And so they need to remove this blood clot in order to be able to figure out what the big discovery is that this scientist was going to tell them about. But it's too dangerous to do this from the outside, so they need to miniaturize these 5 people, send them into his bloodstream, and have them get rid of the blood clot this way. But of course there is somebody in this team that is actually on the other side. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm not gonna say it's like the best book I've ever read or anything like that. It is also super short, so I started saying I want it to be longer, but yeah, in a book that's this short, you cannot go into too much depth, and I felt like a lot of the explanations that were given about certain aspects of how your body works, I did not understand all of them, or I couldn't really follow them. I understand the idea of not being able to write whole paragraphs about it because they're on a tight time frame, and so this is mostly talked about in dialogue, so all of the explanations are done in dialogue and things like that, so it just wouldn't be realistic for them to give a whole lecture on how this or that works in your body. But it would have been nice if we would have had more of an explanation about bodily functions and things like that. It plays a huge part of the drama that goes on in the book, and I just felt like I was not always really getting the whole idea about why is this a threat, what is happening, you know. I enjoyed it nonetheless, but I guess I would have enjoyed it more if I really would have understood more of what was happening in terms of how your body works. And I think it would have also added like an extra element of enjoyment to the story, because it would have been like something recognizable, something that's happening in your own body. The third book that I finished this month, now I really have to think about the order because I finished 2 books like very close together. I'm gonna say that this one might be the other one, but the third book that I finished is also an ebook, so I do not have a physical copy, but I will put a picture somewhere. The third book that I read this month was totally an out of the blue decision, so it didn't appear on my TBR. I didn't read every book that was on my TBR, but I did read this one, and that was Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Ngan. I don't know how to pronounce it, I'm sorry. This book has been on my like general TBR, you know, it's not like a total whim to read it, but I was just suddenly feeling like something light, something fast-paced, and so I went for Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Ngan. Maybe I've just seen a booktube video in which it was mentioned again or something like that, but in any case I really wanted a YA fantasy to kind of get me going again, because my other book was being a bit slower. This was not slow, I can give it that, but it was also not my cup of tea. I liked the concept, I guess, behind the story. So the idea is that we're living in a world in which you have sort of like full demons, half demons, and then like humans. And so the full demons are the moon cased, the middle, like the mix is the steel cased, and then you have the humans, which are the paper cased. And then every year, so the world is kind of ruled by these demons, who are of course the most powerful ones of these three races. And they've kind of conquered the world in the history of this world. And they look down upon humans. Humans are the lowest of the low, but every year 8 girls are chosen to be paper girls, which is, so they're coming from the paper case. They are humans, and they are kind of serve as the emperor's courtesans, if they're forced to do whatever the emperor wants them to do. Now, our protagonist is a girl who's kind of special. She's special, she has different eyes, so she has like what people refer to as demon eyes. They're like amber colored and glowing or something like that. And so she really stands out. And then a disgraced general wants to get back in the emperor's good graces by proposing this girl as a paper girl. However, 8 girls have only been chosen, so actually she becomes the 9th paper girl, so she becomes an exception. And then we just follow her along as we see like how does she deal with this new position, how does she maneuver her position, and the relationships and things like that that ensue from it. Now, I like the concept behind it a little bit. I was annoyed by the fact that we're once again dealing with like a special snowflake who is different from everybody else and things like that. But what I really just didn't like is, I don't know, it lacked a lot for me, it seemed. I mean, I was left wanting more. I didn't really get invested into the characters at all. I felt like there was not a lot of character depth in there, you know. I feel it's a very important book because you have a girl-on-girl relationship in it, which is something that you don't often get represented in novels in general, but YA fantasy definitely not. However, I just felt that that lacked a lot, you know. I didn't feel like that relationship was in any way well developed. There was not that much depth to her feeling, to her emotional journey, which made me not care that much. I mean, there's definitely parts at the very end in which I was just reading to get it to be done with it, and that in which I was really not caring that much about what would happen or what wouldn't. And figuring out that it's like the first in a trilogy was really like, seriously? So I don't think I'm gonna read the sequels because I was just really not that interested anymore. So yeah, I was disappointed by this book, the same way as I was disappointed with 7 Husbands, but it was a different type of disappointment, you know. In both cases I didn't care too much about it, but in this case I felt like there was so much potential there, you know, the potential to be such a book of empowerment, a book about female sexual a book about female sexual exploration, about the blossoming of a girl's sexual desires, about the journey a girl goes through when she discovers that she's has a different orientation than most people around her, an orientation that's not necessarily accepted by everybody. And also I felt like the author shied away from certain things. So these girls are all courtesans to the emperor, and whenever one of the girls is called up by the emperor and they have to perform whatever the emperor wants of them, which you can imagine what that is, like, the girl never wants to talk about it, which, I mean, I definitely understand. But so when it is then time for our protagonist to undergo this, I also felt like we didn't explore the event too much. There was not a big exploration of how she felt about it, what it did to her. And in a way I could of course understand her not portraying the events. I mean, it's still a YA book, so of course you don't want to put too much sexually explicit things in there. Maybe I can understand that. However, exploring the aftermath, I felt like she really left a lot. Like, there was so much potential there, so much there was so much she could have delved into, which is relevant to a lot of girls out there in the world as well. So it's just, to me it felt like such a missed opportunity, that book. So that is my major concern with it, and the reason why I only gave it 2 stars. And then the final book that I finished this month is the hardest book for me to rate so far this year, and it is Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James. Now, I was really looking forward to this book. I also was kind of anxious about it because I have read A Brief History of 7 Killings by him, which was his Man Booker Prize winning novel from a couple of years ago. I did not necessarily care for that one, and I can understand now, after having read Black Leopard, Red Wolf, part of probably my problem with Brief History of 7 Killings. I remember being confused in that book a lot, and I was confused in this book a lot as well. So at some point I was finding it so hard to focus on this book that I decided to download the audiobook, and then I listened to the audiobook while having the book physically on me at the same time, so that I could follow along on the pages to what I was hearing, and that way I was finally able to focus on it. Now that sounds like a bad thing, but I wouldn't necessarily say so. So I'm gonna give it a 3.5 star rating, which isn't high. However, I'm also considering it one of the better books that I've read so far. It's also the only book so far of which I've really been absolutely... I finished it, and the first thing I wanted to do was reread it, because I feel like I missed a lot. I feel like the problems I've had with focusing during this book have really made me miss out on certain of the experience of this book. It's a difficult book to get through. I've listened to a couple of other people reviewing it, and they mostly all agree on this. It's difficult. It's not a fast-paced book. It's not one to which you can fly through because you need to focus on it. You need to pay attention to it because a lot happens fast. It is also structurally quite difficult at times, so it is often a dream within a dream within a dream. So it kind of becomes like a maze of stories that you need to navigate through. So in that sense, it is a book that takes a lot out of you. However, I also thought it was super original, and yeah, when you are in it, when you're really following along, when you're getting what you're reading, it's such an enjoyable experience. So in this novel we follow our protagonist, who's called Tracker. He has what is referred to as the nose. He, for example, if he takes a whiff of a certain item belonging to a person, he'll instantly know if that person is relatively nearby. He'll have a sense of like, that's where that person is. Or at least he'll know like in that direction is where I need to go to find this person. So he's being enlisted by somebody to find a lost boy. This is all the premise you're given before going into this book, and I'm gonna leave it at that. Do know that like it takes 80 pages or something for that part of the book to get in there, and those 80 pages for me were very difficult because it's the first experience you have with his style of writing, his style of storytelling, and it's very disorienting at times, and especially because I was kind of looking for that premise as like the guideline to okay, this is what's supposed to be going on. It was disorienting. So notice the first 80 pages or something, we are not yet introduced to this storyline. We are introduced to certain characters that will pop up throughout the book, and some at multiple times of the book. But so yeah, it is a difficult book to describe. It is a difficult book to read, but it is a wonderful experience. I do feel so. I would like to give it a higher rating. However, I also feel like I need to reflect the fact that it was so difficult to get through, that I cannot just give it a 4-star rating, for example, or 4.5-star rating or anything like that, just because that would be ignoring the fact that I had such a difficult time getting through it, that I needed to like physically have it in hand and listen to the audiobook at the same time to actually get through it at all. Now, definitely need to mention trigger warnings. This book is violent. Violent to the extreme, which is refreshing, I must say as well. I mean, it has like a very visual style to it as well. You know, but the violence that I'm referring to isn't just in like violent acts, it's in sexual violence, it's in verbal violence, a lot of swearing, cursing at each other, insults at each other and things like that. So it is purely violence, most of the book. But I really enjoyed it. It was a very rich world, a very rich experience. new types of characters that you might not have seen in other books, or at least haven't seen that frequently. It is inspired by like African culture, African mythology, so it's something new. I mean, of course there are multiple books at the same around these times that have these types of mythologies. I haven't read any of the others, so maybe this isn't so original if you have just come off of Children of Blood and Bone, for example, which I still have to read. But at least for me, this was a totally original experience. It's unlike any other book that I've ever read, and for that reason alone, I would say give it a go. But do know that it is difficult. It is not for everyone, but it was definitely a book that I'm very happy that I read, and I will definitely read the sequels because this is the first book in a trilogy. So Marlon James here before this has mostly written like literary fiction, and this is his first fantasy. Is it literary fiction fantasy? No, I guess not. It's just fantasy with a very unique writing style. You know, it is not written in a way another fantasy is written. At least none of the fantasies that I've ever read. But maybe I should actually show the book as well. Good on you. So it's a gorgeous cover, by the way. Black Leopard, Red Wolf. So it is dear in my heart. I started tabbing it at the beginning, but then I fell off when I was reading it along with the audiobook, because then it was just like too much at the same time in order for me to also tab it. But so yeah, as I said, it was the book. I finished it and I immediately wanted to reread it. I don't know whether I'll be waiting until the second one comes out to reread this first one. So if you've liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. You'll really be helping me out. Please subscribe if you're interested in seeing more of my content. And definitely let me know down below if you've read any of these books, are interested in any of these books, or completely hated one of these books and want to share your experience with me and everybody else watching this. See you guys next time.